Hi, good morning. I'm here to talk to you about MariaDB, and I have a quick question to ask you. How many of you here use MariaDB? How many use MySQL? So hopefully after this talk, you're going to be inclined to look at MariaDB a lot closer. So I'm Colin Charles. I've worked in the MySQL and MariaDB world for more than 10 years. I was one of the early developers alongside Monty. And I've also worked with Fedora and OpenOffice before as well. Now, out of the top 20 websites you see on Alexa today, for global top 20 sites, you'll realize that 19 out of the 20 run some form or variant of MySQL or MariaDB. No guesses why number 13 does not. That's a Microsoft product. So, and if you look very carefully, companies like Facebook actually don't even run stock MySQL. They run something known as a base called WebScale SQL, and they add on patches. They have over 400 patches to MySQL to make MySQL better. In fact, one of their claims to fame is if you look at their tree, they have the MyRock storage engine, which also allows you to not only use InnoDB, but RocksDB as a backend. And there's a RocksDB talk here after this by someone who may be here. Okay, so they're WebScale SQL pioneers. People like Taobao and Alibaba have been contributing to WebScale as well as MariaDB. They gave us things like multi-source replication, for example. And we work alongside Amazon when it comes to the Aurora interface. Does anybody here use Amazon Aurora? RDS? Okay, so Amazon service is not so popular then. So we make connectors that do automatic failover for them. But I guess the highlight of this slide is that if you look carefully, number 1 and number 3 are owned by Google, and number 6 is Wikipedia. Those sites are all powered by pretty much stock MariaDB. So what is MariaDB Server? Basically, for us, communities are key. So we are on GitHub. You can submit to us without ever having to sign a contributor license agreement. We accept all contributions with new BSD as well. And we are a GPL v2 branch of MySQL, fully developed by the community. We have a lot more features, what I'm going to talk to you about. We aim to always be application compatible and feature complete with MySQL. So we have more features, and if MySQL happens to introduce those features, we will make compatibility layers, and if they introduce a new feature, we also then add it to MariaDB. So you're getting a superset of features. And our aim is to always be a drop-in replacement. So if you happen to use Linux, pretty much every Linux distribution, with the exception of Debian and Ubuntu today, give you MariaDB as a default MySQL. So if you go to Fedora and ask for MySQL, you will get MariaDB Server. February is a very special time for MariaDB because we started our first release of February 1st, 2010. So we are now 6 years old officially, and we have over 4 million downloads. We average about 250,000 downloads a month, but most of our downloads are obviously from Windows users. Most of our actual users are on Linux, getting it from distributions, as you can tell from our support tickets. And through the years, basically 6 years now, we've released many server releases. We're currently at 10.1 and starting to develop 10.2. We've had over 100 server releases since then. But more importantly, we also work with connectors. We give you the ability to have LGPL connectors that you can embed and use without ever having to rely on the false exception that you get with standard MySQL drivers. And I think there are many philosophical reasons why MariaDB is actually important. For one, MySQL is a single owner. It was always a single owner. It was owned by MySQL AB when I worked there. Then Sun bought it, so Sun owned it. And then Oracle bought Sun, and then Oracle owned it. Whereas with MariaDB, you have the foundation, and the corporation. So I'm a representative of the corporation, but the foundation is where Monty sits, and a whole bunch of other folks sit there as well. So there's actually people working on it from both the corporation and the foundation. And I think the other thing is, we see a very vibrant ecosystem now that MySQL is owned by Oracle. MySQL is being pushed forward at Oracle. People at Facebook are making a better MySQL. We work closely with the folk at Facebook. We also work on the MyRocks engine, actually. And for you, the users, community, you get better features, you get better abilities, you get better testing, you get more storage engines, you get to do more things. If you thought using MongoDB was hot because you got to type everything and deal with JSON structures, we learned as well. So we also give you JSON abilities so that you can query columns and get them back as JSON. And the other really important thing about MariaDB is it's not only run by a corporation, it's not only run by the foundation, it also has community contributors. In fact, if you count the people who can commit code to the code base, there are more contributors outside of the foundation and the corporation. It's 25, 18, 5 at last count. So that's 25 external people, 18 from the corporation, and 5 from the foundation, which is phenomenal. At MySQL, it is 100% corporation. So as I said, we do make these LGPL connectors, and they're quite handy. We also like to make enterprise features open. What that translates to is MySQL obviously has an enterprise product, and they reserve some features for you to use only if you pay the $5,000 license fee per server. We don't like that, so we make sure that you get those features open source. So good examples include the threadpool, authentication plugins, firewall, database firewall feature, all of this stuff that you get in enterprise. MySQL, we make sure you get an open source equivalent in MariaDB. And our knowledge base is fully open content, GFDL and Creative Commons license. So if you feel like you want to take the stuff in the knowledge base and translate it into Bulgarian, I guess, and you can do that. You can publish a book, and it is perfectly okay. In fact, we've had people do that in Korea, for example. So I talked a little bit about that whole firewall thing that you get inside of Enterprise. And we give you MaxScale. We actually put a level 7 proxy in front of MariaDB or MySQL that allows you to route connections either based on statements. You can use it for logging. You can use the DB firewall filter built in. You can route via connections, statements. It's really good for Galera Cluster deployments where you have multi-master setups. And MariaDB Galera Cluster is actually extremely popular as well. You can do regular expression filtering. You can even have multiple backends. So if you don't want to only write to, say, MySQL or MariaDB, you can use Avro and get JSON and pump it into whatever else you feel like it. MariaDB is basically found everywhere. It is pretty much in every Linux or BSD distribution as a default. It's also available in things like Cloud Foundry, Rackspace Cloud, Azure. You can find it in Docker Registry, Puppet, Ansible's Galaxy. We really focus on distribution, and we want to ensure that you get MariaDB anywhere. In fact, one of the highlights of the last year was getting MariaDB on Amazon Web Services RDS. And if you go today and try to sign up for RDS, you will see that you can either use Aurora, MariaDB, MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, and SQL Server. Choices are yours. And why would you use MariaDB on AWS, for example? Because you're running it in the cloud, and a lot of people try to access your machines possibly. And with MariaDB, we have extra global variables that you can look for: access denied errors, the busy time, how busy your database is, CPU time, queries that were empty that were run, the memory used, and so forth. So we actually provide a lot more granularity from a database operation standpoint. Out of curiosity, how many here are DBAs to some extent? Not many. So most of you are web developers? Okay. What language though? PHP? What about Node.js? Okay. So one thing about the connectors that I talked about, we didn't write it, but we have a base C connector. The Node.js community actually wrote a Node SQL fast connector that actually uses our asynchronous client library that actually makes your connections and much faster. So compared to the regular MySQL driver. So another good thing from a driver standpoint. So who uses MariaDB? I already mentioned that Google uses MariaDB. They funded parallel replication in MariaDB. And from a developer standpoint, that's great because you can write even more queries and you don't have to worry about your database now being slow because MySQL has traditionally had a single SQL thread. Whereas nowadays you can have multiple SQL threads running in parallel, so applying your queries in parallel, much better. They do code reviews of the mailing list, and they also contributed something known as table space encryption in MariaDB 10.1. Now, if you are writing an application for, say, an e-commerce site, and you have to store credit card data, if you store credit card data in regular MySQL or MariaDB, you're actually not being HIPAA compliant, you're not being PCI compliant, you're just not being compliant with the authorities. If someone breaks in, they can actually walk away your credit card information. I guess the most famous break-in last year was the Ashley Madison website, where people found out that their partners were cheating on them. If they had table space encryption, even if they'd broken in and taken out the data, they wouldn't be able to decrypt the data. So Google actually wrote this and then contributed to MariaDB largely because of Edward Snowden's findings that the NSA was trying to spy on you. So they encrypt everything at rest now. And you can too in MariaDB. Wikipedia migrated back from MySQL 5.1 to MariaDB 5.5 and then now even to 10. And they find that their Optimiser enhancements make a huge difference for them. They like that bugs get fixed for them quickly, and they get query response times much faster. And if you think 4 to 15% faster is nothing to really shout about, for Wikipedia it makes a difference because many people in say third world nations get this Wikipedia Zero or Wikipedia Free, and they're allowed to access Wikipedia even if they don't have a data plan. And I guess if you're following the news closely, that's what Facebook is trying to do in India, called Free Basics, and then they didn't allow them to do that in India. So I guess quicker query times is much better. It saves users on 2G connections a lot. Another user that I'm quite close to is KakaoTalk, their messaging app. Anyone here a fan of K-pop or Korean stuff? Okay. What is the main messenger in Bulgaria? Is it WhatsApp? No. Facebook Messenger? Viber. Okay, I'm not sure what Viber runs. But Kakao is the equivalent to Viber. You can also make calls and so on. And they're fully powered by MariaDB as well. And we've seen greets migrate from Oracle RAC to Galera Cluster. So Oracle RAC is a hugely expensive piece of software, and they're in the e-commerce greeting card space, based I think in Amsterdam. And we're starting to see a lot of web hosters, telcos. I mean, we've been around for 6 years. A lot of people are now supporting us. Oh yeah, so if it wasn't blatantly obvious, this is my first time to Sofia, Bulgaria. I only got here in the evening yesterday. So I'm learning new things. So 10.1. I give you a timeline here to give you a vague understanding of how long it kind of takes to develop a database. We started developing 10.1 in 2014, middle of 2014, and it took us close to a little over a year to give you a generally available release. And the reason why it takes a long time to develop database software is because we can't lose your data, right? Because if we lose your data, it turns out that you will not trust us and you will use another database. So we have to make sure quality is there. And 29 January is when we released 10.1.11. And you can vaguely see that what we do is we work on a monthly sprint cycle. We aim to release a point release once every month. We don't introduce new features unless they're plugins, and then we focus on the next release, obviously. There are a few themes that surround MariaDB, and that's usually around security, HA, performance, operational ease, and of course, some features that are better for developers and DBAs. So one of the main features of 10.1 is at-rest encryption. You can either do table encryption, which is just encrypt a table, so that's encrypting tables that say store credit card details, health records, or so on. Or you can encrypt the entire table space, which is obviously a lot more secure. Now, I highly recommend the table space encryption, and it turns out that in production use cases, we find that there is no more than even a 1% overhead when it comes to you using this. When you run sysbench benchmarks against it, the worst case scenario we've seen is about a 5 to 7% hit rate. But 5 to 7% hit rate for encryption is also not bad, but we've never been able to reproduce that in real-world scenarios. Obviously, when I say tablespace encryption, it might become clear to you that this is only for the InnoDB, ExtraDB storage engines, and we also ship another storage engine called ARIA, and that's for temporary tables, and we can also encrypt that as well. And we encrypt everything. Now, to get started easily, you would use something known as the File Key Management plugin. Now, this basically means you store the key manager. You don't have a key manager, but you store it in a SSL-based file on your system. Obviously, that is completely insecure. You should never do that in production. But if you want to get started, basically get encryption going in 5 minutes, this is how you will start. But naturally, you would need a key server, and key servers are provided by companies like ePri, Amazon Key Management Systems. You have Microsoft providing a key server. We have integrations with a lot of key servers, and you're more than welcome to use whatever you decide to use. So this is an example of how you do encryption on just one table. So we introduced new syntax, which says page encryption equals 1, and the page encryption key equals 1 basically means it exists. Tablespace encryption, we think, is obviously much better than per table encryption, because if you go and decompose the Ashley Madison schema, even if you just encrypted the payment details, you will actually see that you can see email addresses, and email addresses are equally damaging to relationships. So you need to actually specify what to encrypt. So InnoDB encrypt tables, ARIA encrypt tables, and so forth. And then we realized that this would confuse many people because they wouldn't know all the options they needed to turn on. So we actually made a preset that you could just add into your my.cnf called encryption.cnf, and once you import that, you basically run a fully encrypted database. We also do tablespace scrubbing. So this one can work alongside your key management server. You can upgrade the keys. But more importantly, when you do a delete row on a row, you don't want to just leave the data sitting there on the disk, as in remove the row. We actually overwrite the row as well. And this is quite crucial when you're thinking about binary log caches for file sorts that use temporary tables and so forth. So I highly recommend using the encryption bootstrap so that everything is completely encrypted. We also care about passwords. So we actually have a password validation plugin. Now, if you're a web shop and you have multiple users, wouldn't it be nice to know if their passwords to the MariaDB server wasn't ABC12345? Which is quite commonly what the password is. Oh, you must have a minimum 8-character password, ABCDE123. So if you do the simple password check, you can actually specify a regular expression that states what you'd like. And if people still continue writing something like ABCD123, we can also run it against cracklib. So if you use Linux or FreeBSD, you get PAM, and PAM cracklib is available, and if it can be cracked by PAM, it will also be rejected. So you can have 2 layers of security so that people are not the problem to get you into your database. We also ship a SQL error logging plugin in 10.1, and this is kind of handy because when you're writing an app, you may occasionally obviously see errors that the database is throwing at you. Wouldn't it be nice if you actually logged all those errors? Because when you go home at 5 o'clock in the evening and everybody starts shopping on your website from 8 to 10 o'clock, it would be nice to know what kind of errors they were seeing so that tomorrow you could increase capacity and so forth. And that's what the SQL error logging plugin is for. It's basically to log all errors sent to the client to a file that you can then study. Now, if someone was trying to break into your app every day from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning, this would obviously also be logged. Financial services, people also love audits. They don't like that database administrator or root could obviously override things. So we give you the audit plugin that basically logs all kind of server activity, who logs onto the server, what queries they run, what tables they touch. This is based on connections, and it works with everything. So you can just turn on the audit plugin and have it either logging to a file or to syslog, and syslog obviously will rotate for you. Quite handy. We find that many banks and web shops love to use this. We also ship authentication plugins, and this is a MySQL Enterprise feature made open. We give you a PAM plugin, which we've been shipping since 2011, which allows you to authenticate against Unix PAM or Linux PAM. And this is kind of cool because you can actually have, with the Google Authenticator application running on your server, you can now have two-factor authentication to MySQL. You can be told to send a username, a password, and a code that Google Authenticator provides on your phone, which you obviously can't do normally. And then we also give you the Kerberos GSS API-based authentication plugin. And this is important if you happen to run against, say, Windows Active Directory, or if you use MIT's Kerberos, which is, again, what financial institutions tend to use. I don't know how many people actually run this yet, but okay. So yeah, if you happen to run on a Windows server, this is actually really useful because you don't have to do user management inside of MySQL or MariaDB any longer. You can hand user management off to Active Directory. So if the person happens to say they're resigning today and you want to shut them out of everything, you just turn them off in Active Directory, and it's pretty magical. And of course, we take lots of improvements from WebScale SQL. We run things through Address Sanitizer. We want to make things more secure for you out of the box by default. I mean, we even compile with Fortify source. HA is another one of our strong points. We believe that the reason why MongoDB got fairly popular is also largely because it's very easy to scale out. But that's also one of the reasons why MySQL got popular. It's really easy to replicate, right? But failover, automatic failover is a problem with MySQL. And that's largely because we never really had the idea of global transaction IDs. But now if you have a global transaction ID, it should be easy to switch masters, it should be easy to change masters and so forth. So we make our slaves completely crash safe. And this is basically now how you provision a new slave. Turning on global transaction ID does not require you to restart your topology. So MySQL 5.6 actually requires a complete restart of your topology, whereas MySQL 5.7 fixes this. We allow you to just do change master to use a current position and start the slave. This is so much better than having to restart things because you can't do them in production. And then if you have a failover, because masters have failed, now it's as simple as doing change master to master host and starting the slave again. This is actually kind of useful because previously the only solution to this was using something like MHA that had to do a diff on the binary logs and then apply the binary log diffs. This is so much better than having to do diffs. So MySQL 5.6, is that what most people here are using now? Yes? Anything older than MySQL 5.6? Anyone using MySQL 5.7 yet? No. One person. Okay. So MySQL 5.7 is the first MySQL to support multi-source replication. Now that only came out last October. We've had multi-source replication since MariaDB 10, which was like 2012 or 13 or something. So we needed something, a GTID that supported multi-source. We also allow you to turn off log slave updates to save space, and 5.7 finally has fixed this as well. But for us, the other thing that's important with GTID is it's enabled by default. You don't have to turn it on. And if you compare binary log sizes, they actually are hugely different. I mean, there's a 60% larger binlog size just for a simple example like that if you run against MySQL. And you can try this on your laptops now even. Multi-source replication, we think, is actually quite useful, largely because if you have things like shards and you want to re-aggregate them, you can do that. If you want to make complete backups of your shards, you can also do that. If you want to run real-time analytics across your multiple data centers, you can also do that. And for us, this was a contribution from Taobao, and it's been used in production on sites even when it was in alpha. And it's brilliant. It allows multiple masters to write to a single slave. And there's nothing more to be said about this. This exists in other database servers. It existed in MariaDB for quite some time, and now it's also in MySQL 5.7. But the other cool thing for us is that we've also integrated a fully HA solution in the sense that we've integrated Galera Cluster. So there are people who work on Galera Cluster that live in Sofia as well. There's at least one very cool QA guy who lives here. And basically, we integrate the full version of Galera Cluster into MariaDB. And what we want to do from that is basically say that you can just turn on the right set replication plugin and basically have a fully HA database out of the box. Galera works best with a minimum of 3 nodes. And the concept behind Galera is that it will write the transaction to all nodes or no nodes, as in it'll ask you for a rollback. This is huge because many people previously who wanted to do something like this would have to use NDB cluster or something like Oracle Rack. But you can get this here inside of Galera Cluster, and this is great for e-commerce sites and so forth. And you can also run clusters from multiple data centers. So you could have 3 sitting in the data center here, 3 sitting in a data center in London, and 3 sitting in a data center in Ireland. And you would have geographical redundancy as well. So we allow you to have parallel replication so that if you send the transactions as a developer in parallel, they get executed in a parallel form. But now we have optimistic parallel replication so that as a developer, even if you don't send the transactions in a parallel form, if we detect that they can be executed in a parallel form, we will actually do it for you automatically. So more win for developers, less work for DBAs. Now, in MySQL, if you want to take a consistent backup, what you have to do is basically do flush tables with read lock, and then take a backup, and then unlock the tables. Now, this is not very useful because you're actually basically having a read lock on your data. So, because we have enhanced the binary log, we allow you to do something called start transaction with consistent snapshot. So this is all part of our group command implementation. So you just type start transaction with consistent snapshot. And now you can do a MySQL dump with single transaction and master data. And it executes that as obviously one transaction, but it makes it such that you now have all your master data up to that transaction where you ran start transaction with consistent snapshot. Now you can take the data from the MySQL dump file, reload it onto a slave, and you have a fully consistent snapshot without ever having to run flush tables with read log. This is huge. It's a great way to save time. It's a great way to provision new slaves. It's a great way to get backups, logical backups. And this is so huge that even Percona Server has spotted it. Anybody here use Percona Server out of curiosity? No. Then we enhanced replication even further. And basically, I'd like to say that we didn't do a lot of the enhancements on this slide. It all came from people like Google and Facebook. And it's wonderful when other people are running this at scale doing the work, seeing the bottlenecks at scale, making it better for you, and then when you run it, you're getting much better database overall. Now for us, we had a thread pool long before MySQL Enterprise had a thread pool. We had a lib event-based thread pool. But then we decided that we needed to modify it when MySQL Enterprise released the thread pool to make it, feature compatible. So when you have a lot of short-running queries, now typically queries that return in less than 1 second, so your typical web shop basically, or your typical chat app, because to generate one page you may make, say, 10 queries, right? And 10 little queries. Now to generate one page and you made 10 little queries that's hit the database 10 times, and the MySQL model is to open up one thread per connection. Now this is very bad from a CPU resource usage point. There's also, it's bad from mutexes. So we allow you to just open up a set of threads that you can use and continue reusing them. So there's no one thread per connection model any longer. So web shops, by turning this on, by having thread handling equals pool of threads turned on, automatically see improvements in their workloads, basically. And this is a good slide that you can see that after about 256 threads, the performance without the thread pool dips clearly, but the performance with the thread pool still remains pretty high. And we also allow you to have things like a high priority mode for some tickets. And we ourselves didn't make those improvements. Percona made those improvements, and then we backported those improvements. So everyone benefits from having open source development, something that we don't see from the MySQL Enterprise world. We love if you use InnoDB. Who here does not use InnoDB? Oh, wow, what do you use that's not InnoDB? If you're using MyISAM, it's time to upgrade. So we focus a lot of improvements on InnoDB. The last time we focused on improvement in MyISAM, it was about 2010, I think. So we haven't really made MyISAM better. We've made InnoDB and ExtraDB better. And we've allowed you to now defragment InnoDB. So you don't have to basically create new tables and get rid of the old ones, because InnoDB does fragment over time. Now we have online defragmentation that Facebook created, Kakao ported, we benefit. And we make more information schema tables available for you that are being removed inside the same MySQL 5.7, because MySQL is aiming for you to use performance schema. We don't like you to use performance schema because by default, performance schema has a hit on your performance because it's run as a storage engine. So you have sometimes anywhere between 5 to 7% reduction in performance when performance schema is enabled. So we ship without performance schema turned on. You can turn it on if you like, but we turn it off. But information schema is free because it's all metadata. We made a whole bunch of cool improvements to WebScale, and these slides will be available so you can go read about the improvements, but I just want to highlight one of them, and that was the InnoDB idle flush %. What that basically does is, because InnoDB flushes to this from time to time, but when your database is idling, you may not want to flush all the time because flushing reduces the lifespan of your flash devices. So you can actually now tune this that when your systems are fairly idle, they don't flush often, and you actually don't end up killing your flash. This is immensely important because companies like Facebook run on a mix of flash and disk, and flash is got smaller storage and is a lot more expensive compared to spinning disk. We made a whole bunch of scalability improvements that you may notice if you happen to run on esoteric hardware platforms like Power 8. Anybody here run on Power 8 yet, or think about Power 8? Okay, so Power 8 is IBM's rather expensive platform that is not x86. And if you happen to find interest in that, we have made improvements because the way the memory models in Power 8 work are very different from x86-64. They actually require you to specify memory barriers, and we have all those fixes available. So out of the box, you can run MariaDB on Power 8, or even ARM, to be fair, because both Power and ARM architectures are such that they are more strict with their memory models. And we don't see many people having ARM servers yet. You can only buy them at scaleway.com, I think, now, but eventually people do believe that ARM will be important. Now, as developers, wouldn't it be nice if you could have some per query variables? That means while you're developing the system, you basically say, hey, I'd like to maybe have this statement only run for 1,000 seconds. That could be very useful while developing, so you don't do full table scan unnecessarily. And this is something we allow you to do. And then when I talked about the whole statement timeout, max statement expiring in, say, 1,000 seconds, you can also have this because we have something known as statement timeouts. So now you don't have to, you can actually, as a database administrator even, disable queries that run too long. You can set it by default that all queries must end after, say, 5 seconds. So you don't, this is obviously not for your business intelligence servers, but this is great for web connections. So if the connection died but didn't close it properly, the query is still running, you can get it terminated by default. Web hosting companies love the kill syntax. Stop paying your bills. Great. Kill user username. Gone. All your queries are now dead. Of course, you also have to figure out another way to shut down the rest of the users' accounts, but this is brilliant. You can actually tie this up in your script and in the user killing thing. You can also kill based on queries, kill based on connection IDs. Very useful. Then we also have progress reporting. Now, since most of you are web developers, presumably a lot of you do things like have uploads, right? You want to see what the progress of the upload is. Well, we can give you progress reporting for uploads, which is load data, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend you loading data blobs into the database, so don't do that. But if you're also doing like an alter table, you can also get progress reporting. And all this is exported via the connectors that you're currently using, so you can actually get this back inside whatever web app you're using as via hooks. We made a huge number of Optimiser enhancements, and going by the theme of JSON, if you like to extract JSON from your explain, you can then save this into tools and use them. We had the ability to do virtual columns, and we've had this for quite some time now. This is where you put business logic into your application, where you can have persistent or virtual columns. So a good example of doing the persistent virtual column is when you're doing an application that has currency transactions, because if you're running an e-commerce store and your base currency is, say, the Bulgarian currency, and it changes against the dollar every 4 hours, you can actually have the virtual column keep on changing every 4 hours when you dump the data via, say, HTTP. And we allow you to bring in data via HTTP because we have enhanced regular expressions inside of MariaDB. We ship PCRE standard regular expressions. We also have the Connect engine, which has full JSON and BSON support. So if you happen to want to read your MongoDB files or write to MongoDB files, this is possible now because MongoDB uses BSON. And of course, you can also connect to remote host via ODBC and treat it like a local table. So you can connect to a Postgres, SQL Server, Oracle Server, and import data from there into MariaDB. We have a whole bunch of random other bits, but another cool thing that I'll talk about is GIS. Now, everyone thought that for GIS and mapping related things, you should always look at PostGIS. Postgres has won this, but then we realized that this would be actually quite useful for many people. So we have a fully GIS compliant database that follows the OpenGIS spec that doesn't only look for minimum bounding rectangles, which are like squares, or rectangles, but now can also plot routes in between. This is hugely useful when you're making a location-aware application. And we can actually dump the OpenStreetMap data into MariaDB now with ease. A lot of this came from the community, and it would be bad if I didn't say whom contributed some major code. And by major code, I say anything longer than 15 lines of code. Huge amounts of people who contributed. including people like Photoshop, IBM, Oracle even, because we merged with Oracle, right? We merged MySQL features into MariaDB. It's really interesting to see that MySQL 5.7 has implemented features that we've shipped for maybe 5 years that they only released as a GA at the end of last year. A lot of these features that you were already being able to use in MariaDB only came to MySQL recently. But then there are a whole bunch of other features that still have not appeared in MySQL. So if you think about using MariaDB today, it is like using MySQL of tomorrow. MySQL makes one major release every 2.5 to 3 years. We make a major release every, if we're lucky, 9 months, generally 18 months. You're getting access to a whole bunch of new things that you can use today in production that you will not see in MySQL for quite some time. And the best thing is you can participate. You can contribute code, you can write articles. Reporting bugs is a great way to contribute. We're always available to chat. I don't know if there are any students at a university in this audience. Are there any students here? Not as many as I was hoping. But if you are a student, I'm sure you've heard of Google Summer of Code before, where Google pays you, I think, $5,000 to write some code over a summer. We've participated for the last 3 years in Google Summer of Code and aim to participate again this year. This is a great way to get programming and getting a job. Usually everyone who's participated in our GSOC has either been hired by not only us, but other people as well, and they've all got jobs. Huge chunks of books. I count 9 that are available today, and hopefully we'll see more. So generally speaking, MariaDB is completely GPL v2 licensed. We definitely have more features than MySQL, and we aim to be always feature complete with MySQL. We want to always make enterprise features open for you, and we really just are distributed everywhere. And you might be wondering, what is it we do? Obviously, we don't just make free software, so if you ever were in the market for buying random services, MariaDB has an enterprise subscription that you can obviously buy. The slides will be available there and probably at the website here. And I'm now open for questions. We have some time for questions, right? No, we don't. Okay, I'll be outside for questions, or you can also send me an email or a tweet. So thank you for listening, and good luck with your MariaDB usage.